All right. So when we continue our discussion about depolicing, then right, there are a few things that we should be cognizant of when we think about this, right? So we focus, and proponents of the depolicing effect or say that this is real or is substantial harm. Are basically indicating that the crime, the risk of crime, which will put in risk, right? So the fact that this is coming out outweighs any benefits associated from police reform. Which is more or less is what they're saying, correct? Right? Because there are certain things that we kind of know, right? There's no way police reform is going to happen if it's not needed, right? Or if there isn't at least the idea that it's needed. So that indicates there's going to be people are being illegally searched and seized. They're being profiled against. They're just rude police officers. People are dying that should not be dying. All that stuff is going to happen, right? So there's no escaping that, police reform isn't going to happen because of good reasons, right? Because, usually it's not done to better the police department or new standards, although some police departments do that. But when someone is being forced or coerced to reform, it's not for great reasons, right? No one's ever like, well, you're doing a great job. Let's see if we can get that a little bit better. Get you a little brighter, sunnier. No, it's because, like, if you look at the example of Albuquerque PD in 2014 or something like that, they shot like I think they went through a period where like 6 people were shot to death, or I guess shot to death in like a month or something like that. So that warranted investigation. So there's really no escaping this external scrutiny, right? So by extension, then what they're saying is that because of this increased crime risk, right, even if there are any benefits from police reform, then it's just not worth it, right? Which is an interesting argument. So it's interesting because we can't do police reform because officers are going to be demoralized. And, like, is it really worth it, guys? I mean, if you really think about it, you really shouldn't do that, right? Now, that, of course, is debatable, and some people may not agree. Other people also interpret this as, it's an attack on the police. And it doesn't mean, it is sometimes interpreted as people hate police departments and police officers, and this is a threat to them and changing our way of life, and we're becoming like less safe, right? Now, depending on your point of view, you could just be like, well, it's not that, one argument could be like, yeah, I just don't like shitty police behavior, right? Like, I'm pro-police, I hate shitty police behavior. That's one perspective. Of course, some people do straight up, like hate the police and like, fuck the police, right? There are some people like that, right? So, depending on what that is, right? So it's sort of a fear-based narrative, or this is actually real, right? So this does require. We do know though that there are costs associated with crime. If you think about like the money for officers in general, right? That is the first part, right? There is the cost to courts and corrections to begin with, right? Plus, there's the actual cost of the reform itself. At the federal level, they usually try to do like 5 years, but oftentimes it drags on. So the cost of the police department, that money is just kind of like tied up, right? Advocates would also say that there is no guarantee of institutional change. So why even bother? That is certainly one perspective. So again, delta with the change. So all of that, is kind of occurring the way in the background, right? And is it really, one person? You again have to ask yourself, right? Is it worth it? Which is an interesting question, right? Like, is correcting police misbehavior worth it when there are potential harms to society associated with not doing it, right? So if we think about this like a little bit more, then what do we get from police reform? So what are the benefits? So if we think about, we're going to call them PRB, police reform benefits. The intent of it is like, hey, maybe stop bad behavior. Where people are being illegally arrested and stuff, right? Like it seems pretty good. There's also, just like, sending a moral and ethical message. So it's saying this behavior is not, going to be accepted. It also kind of communicates, right, that the government, can be held accountable by other people, and there is some value in that. Let me start boxing this up because I didn't do that. So, if you're being shown that the government is accountable and that, no one's above the law, there is some benefit related to that. We also know that if there is a change in behavior, this could lead to a change in, public perception and trust in police, right? So that there is some benefit towards that as well. And some could also say, or could argue, right, that there is, maybe no change in crime. Or there could be like potentially for less injury because the officers are less, hyped up in situations because they went through some retraining. Maybe they're less likely to be, injured, or maybe because they, approach things differently. There could be less crime in general, right? Who knows, right? But this is sort of the argument you have to make, right? There's also this section, right, where some people believe that police are inherently a racist institution. So if you are doing things to reduce at least very much the perception of, less racism or less race-based policies, there's some intrinsic good in having more equitable, fair police department and, at least trying to fix things, right? So there is some benefit in changing perceptions or practices that were disproportionately harmful or racist. Again, this is all depending on your perspective. Not all police departments are the same. I am not saying the police are or are not a certain thing. I'm just saying that this could be an argument that people say. Please keep that in mind. I'm not making value-based judgment. I'm just saying these are counter arguments, right? Against race, right? So this is not to decry police officers. I'm not saying, and I'm not saying back the badge. I'm not saying, fuck the police, right? Neither of those are true. Just simply a discussion of points. So with this then, right, if you think about all these net benefits, then what they're saying is that the risk of crime is, going to be like too much, right? And we shouldn't outweigh it. Now, when we think about is the risk of crime too much? So when we think about this kind of behavior, right, that there is no empirical justification for that kind of thing, right? There really isn't a number where like that can be said. That is entirely an individual level decision, and there really is no empirical basis. Whether or not something is too much or not enough is entirely subjective. That is true for police misbehavior. That is true for police crime. That is true for how many peanut butter M&Ms you drink with your Diet Coke each morning, right? No, I don't actually peanut butter M&Ms with Diet Coke. I hate Diet Coke, but I do love peanut butter M&Ms. I can't eat them because I will eat the entire 1 pound bag if you let me in one day. I've done it before. I'll do it again, damn it. So the point being is like you can't, those are subjective assessments, right? And so when people are advocating for depolicing, I think there is a hidden messaging that says like, oh, crime, this like mysterious number, we don't know how much it is. And whether people have good estimates of the true amount of crime in their community, I think has demonstrably been shown to it. But you are playing on that fear, right? Because we know that crime affects things like insurance, it affects property values, it affects, just feeling safe, really. It affects behavior in terms of buying security gear and stuff like that. So I mean, like there are crime is associated with a lot of like behavior in public, right? So I mean, there's a lot to consider. There's a lot to consider. So with this then, if we think about this, that is not something that's really answered then. So, kind of with that, hold on to that,